Hello, Garland Nixon here, and we're going to talk about this Venezuela thing. We're going to talk about MAGA and the future, or maybe not the future of MAGA. Let's talk. Hello, Garland here. It's Monday morning, and as many people know, I'm a very busy man. Got a lot going on right now, but I'm still managing to get my shows in because here's the reality. I got stuff to talk about. A lot of people are like, Garland, why do you do this? What's it all about? Is it well, let me put it like this. It sure ain't for the money. If it was for the money, I'd still be hanging out at Fox, right? I would have never left Fox. That was where the money was, brothers. But no, it's or I'd be out, doing probably working for the Department of Homeland Security or something like that if it was about the money, right? Contracting or something like that. I tell a lot of people, guys like me and Larry Johnson and Scott and all of us, we have significant backgrounds in law enforcement and all kinds of things. Those guys, intelligence, all of us could be making a lot of money if we wanted to go out into the industry. But we believe in peace and we believe in hanging out with you guys in the chat and girls, and this is what we got to do. So let's get going. MAGA. If you're going to talk about MAGA, one of the things I believe in doing is being, professional and being organized about the way I do things, right? And as an example, when I used to write regulations, one of the things I'll tell you about laws and regulations is it starts with a glossary. If you're going to write a law that says no motor vehicle may do this or no motorboat may do this or whatever, at the beginning of the law, regulation, whatever, you have to define what a motor vehicle or a motor vessel or whatever it is in that regulation, what it is. You have to define it so that if somebody can challenge the law or challenge it and say, well, this particular thing is not a motor vehicle. It doesn't have a motor, or it doesn't have wheels, or it's not capable of, traversing on a road, whatever, right? You've got to define things. So when we talk about MAGA, we got to define MAGA. And some of you may have heard my definitions of MAGA in the past, but so be it. Some haven't. Let me see the way I see MAGA. Now, in the same way that there are politically convenient definitions for things, I think there's been a politically convenient definition for MAGA by the Democrats. Right. The liberal world defines MAGA one way. It's a convenient and political definition. I have my own definition of MAGA. And that's this. My definition of MAGA is, and you can disagree, I don't even know if it's right, but when you listen to this particular, you don't have to take this definition anywhere else, but when you listen to this particular soliloquy, right, understand this is how I'm defining MAGA, okay? And that is that after 2008, there was a left wing and a right wing pushback against mostly the bailouts, against this belief that, this understanding that the Wall Street people, that the speculators, right, the finance capital speculators violated every law, did everything wrong, manipulated the system to their benefit, and then stole everything that wasn't nailed down, and then went back and stole the nails. And that when they came to the government, Obama came in, was Bush did it with a 3-page document, and then Obama came in and continued with it. And what did they do? They bailed them out. They gave them money. And if you remember, what's the first thing Wall Street did when they gave them all the bailouts? They started handing out the money, the bonuses. Think about that. They stole everything. They wrecked the system. The government gave them money, and they started handing out bonuses for people who had wrecked the system. They're like, hey, you did a great job of wrecking the system. Here's your bonus, massive bonuses. Well, you had Occupy Wall Street, which fell apart, which I believe was co-opted. I really believe it was co-opted. It started off and they were like, we're going to stand up against Wall Street. And then immediately the anarchist kind of flow came in, and it got to the point where they had these people there that were asking for nothing. Kind of reminds you of the No Kings. You know what I mean? When they co-opt these things, they turn them into just hollow shells of a movement. They ask for nothing. And then it got to the point at Occupy where, because I was studying that, where they were they had to have at these Occupy camps, they had to have unanimous vote for anything they did, or it couldn't happen. Well, all you need to do, as soon as you get to the point where there's unanimous vote, or you have to have unanimous vote, all you got to do is stick in an agent provocateur to vote no on anything you don't want. You can kill anything. So it fell apart. Eventually it melted away, and then the Democrats came in and, you know, mowed it down and, you know, knocked the camps out. And which the Republicans, if they were in power, they would have done the same thing. Okay, so that's the bottom line. So the bottom line is that was it wasn't a left-wing pushback, really. It was a liberal pushback, and people are starting to understand the difference between left-wing, which would be Garland Nixon, which would be, you know, Max Blumenthal, which would be Glenn Greenwald, and liberals, that's the Democratic Party, the liberal warmongering lunatics, right? So that was a liberal pushback, which was easily co-opted. And of course, on the right wing, the Tea Party, they came out, right? And it was taxed enough already. That was Tea Party, but it ended up being, you know, it was a pushback against the bailouts. It was a pushback against the elite. However, that was quickly co-opted. The billionaires came in, the Koch brothers came in, and they, you know, funded this thing called the Tea Party Express. And they put, you know, all this corruption was involved. If you remember, Tom DeLay and that other guy were involved. I forgot his name. And they co-opted that. The elite did the same thing. They co-opted the Tea Party. They made the Tea Party Express supposedly almost like a political action committee that was funded by billionaires, and did the same thing. That's the ruling elite are really good at that. They're really good at co-opting any kind of political movement. Okay, so this thing kind of was fizzled out. And if you remember in 2010, I remember because I was at Fox Business then, right? The Tea Party came in with all of these illusions that they were going to change the system, and all of these Tea Party members came in, and these people were like, yeah, we got Tea Party members, we're going to change the system now. And of course, the system changed them. Or they never really changed, right? The system, they came in and they were just a bunch of puppets, and they did what the system does. Fill their pockets full of money, and they mostly, with a few exceptions, just, you know, melted away into the system. They melted into the system, right? And so the Tea Party was really physically dying out in that it didn't have the physical representation in Congress of the original Tea Party ideals. You can agree with them or disagree with them, but it was a pushback against the elites to some extent in their own way. And it was melting away. It was on its way out, and it was dead, kind of politically dead. Occupy Wall Street had died. And the resurgence of Occupied Wall Street was the Bernie Sanders movement. But again, Bernie Sanders, was a fraud ultimately, and he had no long-term vision for change. He just was, let's stand up and shake our fist at the system for a little while, and then when the next election comes around, then we'll melt into the system and go back to saying, hey, let's just support the liberal elite. But that was an attempt at waking up at the Occupy movement. I'm still doing my intro here. So, and of course, ultimately, along comes Donald Trump, and he, to me, takes over the Tea Party movement. He rebranded it as MAGA, Make America Great Again, right? Which was, from their perspective, we're going to, I think from the working class perspective, it was, we have a champion and he's going to stand up for what we want, which is to go back to the time, the 50s, the 60s, whatever, when we had factories and factory jobs, and you could get out of high school and go get a job at the local factory and make money. And so what they were doing was they were attempting to reject a financialized, speculative capital system. We had good luck with that. But that was the plan, and it was a valiant plan, right? There's some areas that I certainly disagree with MAGA when it comes to the whole free market thing. I think that's a fraud, as we're finding out the market being free, right? Um, and that it's wholly captured by the ruling elite in Wall Street. The idea that Donald Trump or any other politician could A, represent the working people, and B, at the same time become president and change the system. Yeah, well, that's JFK, how that would work out, right? So Donald Trump now was doing that juggle, and that is, you might have heard this before, when the government's job is to tell the rich people, I'll protect you from the poor people, to tell the poor people, I'll protect you from the rich people, when really they just represent the rich people, but they got to, they really are working to represent their donors. But they're there to bamboozle the masses in the working class into thinking, no, we're juggling this thing, man. There's no juggling going on. So that was Trump, and he had his time where he was able to juggle and pretend. And then, of course, he had great assistance from the Democrats. A combination of things. Number one, Russiagate. The whole Russiagate thing convinced a lot of people that, hey, they're really trying to take Trump out. So he really wants to do something different in foreign policy. Additionally, going into 2024, when they charged Donald Trump everything but mopery on the high seas, where they used all manners of lawfare to try to take Donald Trump out and stop him from running, right? When all of those things happened, it convinced MAGA and a lot of people who weren't MAGA, it convinced them that Donald Trump really was the truth, that Donald Trump really was the outsider, that Donald Trump really was going to push back and fight back and stop the evil warmongers, and Donald Trump played into it. He made videos. I'm going to stop the warmongers and the neocons. I'm going to blah, 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 right? Okay. So that's the setup. That's how we get where we are today. Donald Trump wins. But when Donald Trump wins, the same dynamics, I don't care. It doesn't matter what Donald Trump does or doesn't want to do. Well, it does. It doesn't matter to some extent what he does or doesn't want to do. But here's where we are. Donald Trump comes in, and again, Miriam Adelson is, giving him a fortune. And so what does he do? My understanding is Rubio. Adelson said, you got to have Rubio in there. That Adelson vetted some of the people look, let's face it. Was it Tom? What's his name? I interviewed him a long time ago. I can't think of his name. You might know him. If I told you his name, you'd remember him. He's a famous lefty from California. But at any rate, he said when he ran for state senate, they had to take him. He ran for state senate in California. He was taken to AIPAC, and he had to be vetted and answered some questions. State senate. So basically, as I see it, Trump's team had to be vetted by AIPAC and their representatives, right? So he put together a team that was vetted by AIPAC. And of course, Tulsi Gabbard had to say, oh, I love Israel. What's his name? Kash Patel, everything had to be, I love Israel. And they couldn't push back against Israel. And so that's where we are now. So Trump has a team that is vetted by AIPAC. And he is allegedly, ostensibly supposed to be representing MAGA. Now, I think the thing to understand about MAGA, basically, notwithstanding all of the criticism we can make about MAGA, and we could make much, that within MAGA, there's a strong element that this is a reality, a powerful element. I don't know yet if I can say it's a prevailing or dominant element, but I can say it is a very powerful element in MAGA that, number one, has had enough of war and regime change war. I'm not saying that they're anti-war. I don't know. I just know that somehow there is an element in MAGA that understands the connection between foreign policy and domestic policy, that understands, maybe even intuitively, that if we put together if we're spending all this money on bases, we're spending all this money on Israel, we're spending all this money on Ukraine, that if we're doing that, then we can't have that money for here, whether it's school, whether it's to cut taxes, whatever they may want to do. We may disagree on what they want to do. I'd be like, Medicare for all, get everybody health care. And they may be like, no, we don't need government health care. We need to continue to let the corporations do it because they do it so much better, right? Well, we can disagree on that, but we can agree on a reality that says, hey, all of our money going into 900 bases in Israel and Ukraine and trying to overthrow governments all over the country, that money should be being spent on us. You can talk about whether it's printed, you can about whether it's taxable, you can talk however you believe that money comes into existence. We're better off. It's our money as opposed to going into the empire, the machine of the empire, which is all about foreign policy, right? Okay, so there's an element in MAGA that doesn't like all the money going overseas, right? Doesn't like all of the regime change, neocon stuff. They use the term globalism, depending on where you are ideologically, whether you use the word globalism or regime change, that's up to you, right? So here's my point. I'm not here to judge MAGA. I'm here to try to understand it. That's all, right? I'm trying to understand it. I'm not trying to judge it. I'm trying to understand it as a political force in the United States. So let us continue. So right now, we have to understand something as far as the political climate. In the political climate, okay, you have traditionally two parties, right? You've got the Republican Party, which is around 30%. You've got the Democratic Party, which is around 30%. But then you've got 40% that is neither Republican or Democrat. However, the assumption in the United States is improper about that other 40%, because the assumption is, this is the assumption: the Republicans are to the right, the Democrats are to the left, and in the middle is that 40%. Well, that's not wrong three times. Number one, the Republicans are not the traditional right currently. The Democrats, damn sure, they're liberals. The liberals are not the traditional left, particularly this brand of liberalism. So what we have now is the Democrats are, in fact, the Republican Party from 2000 through 2006. They're the Republican Party under George W. Bush. That's what the liberals are right now. Even look at the people. Who loves the liberals? Who is writing letters in support of Kamala Harris? Who is doing that? Bill Kristol, Max Boot, John Bolton, the people who were literally in the George W. Bush Cheney administration, have completely jumped ship and got on board with the Democratic Party. They were fully brought in to the club when Hillary Clinton, 2016, when her people completely absorbed the DNC. That's when it became just nothing but a warmongering neocon party. Not that it was much different before then, but it was the icing was on the neocon cake at that point. So the Democrats now, I saw Gregory Meeks the other day, right? Gregory Meeks, just some old black Uncle Tom, as far as I'm concerned, just a puppet for the system. And he's talking about what we've got to do. We've got to understand that we've got to put more pressure on Putin. I mean, he's just gone, Macron, John Bolton. That's who the Democrats are now, right now. For all of the problems we have at home, if you listen to the Democrats, they're talking about Israel and Ukraine. They still haven't gotten that concept that perhaps somebody in our country may need some help. They don't get that. So the Democrats, the liberals now, nothing but fake warmongers, doing rituals. That's all they're doing. They're doing what I would call do-gooder rituals, right? This is the Democrats now. You just look at Hollywood. Hollywood's the Democrats now. Hollywood now is, if you are opposed to genocide, you can't work in Hollywood. They hate your guts. They'll shove you out. You can't get a job if you're an actor or actress or whatever, if you're opposed to genocide. But they're constantly virtue signaling, because every movie you watch, that's why I don't even watch it. I can't even stand to look at it anymore. It's just crap out of Hollywood. Because every movie you watch, if there's four people. I remember watching this one ship. It was a sci-fi. They're on a ship, and there's four people on the ship. There's a black person, there's a white female, there's an Asian person, and there's another person that I think was a female, but I'm not really sure. And that's Hollywood. They will support every war. They will all have on blue and yellow supporting the Nazis in Ukraine. They'll support every damn evil regime change, murderous Zionist, you name it. Hollywood is all supporting it. But then they'll put 5 different people and they're all a different race and different color and different gender and different this and different that. They'll do all of that stuff and they will then say, we're the good guys. Look, we've got a Native American person. They had one of the these superheroes was named Echo. It was the woman was Native American, and she was deaf, and she had one leg. So it's a female Native American who can't hear, who's only got one leg cut off. So it's like checks all the boxes, right? So I'm like, okay, you're in favor of every evil Zionist, imperialist, warmongering, neocon plot across the planet to steal everything from brown people like her. But yet, at the same time, you're going to put her out front with this ritual. Look at this. We're the good guys. We have Native American person right there, blah, blah, blah. And we've got one gay person and one straight person and one non-gendered person, one all this. So therefore, we're the good guys. Absurd, silly rituals. Okay, that's them. That's the whole thing that's all that liberalism has left right now is rituals. Meanwhile, you've got the and here's what's critical about that. And this whole genocide thing in Israel really knocked the crap out of the whole liberal establishment and liberal leadership over the fake left, because there were a lot of people who really did see genocide and say, hey, I'm not, especially young people, hey, you're not going to drag me along with that. Liberals said, shut up and do what you're told. There we got it. So we have the liberal alliance, shall we say, that's severely damaged, severely weakened. And the only thing they can do is say, let's wait for Trump to screw up, because we ain't doing nothing for anybody. We don't care, and we're just liberal warmongers. But hopefully Trump will screw up so bad we'll win in the midterms, right? In fact, I'm going to put this thing up. Now I've set the table. Now let's get the MAGA. I put this thing up. Let me find it. In fact, I got it from Dr. Jim Kavanaugh, my dear friend. Okay. And you may be familiar with this crap. Bingo. So this is the game, right? Dems win on vibes, and you can start anywhere you want to, top or bottom. Dems win on vibes. They fail to deliver. The GOP wins on backlash. They fail to deliver. And you can change it either way. Right now, the Dems in the middle, let's say they win on a backlash. They're going to fail to deliver. The only thing they're going to do if they get in, they're going to say, we're in power now. And you're going to be like, oh, great, things are tough. What are we going to do? They're going to say, oh, we're going to impeach Trump. That's it. We're going to impeach Trump. That's what they'll do, because that's their game. We're going to impeach Trump because, just like the no kings crap, there's no substance there. They can't talk about foreign policy because they're in favor of every bad foreign policy. They can't do any of this stuff. All they can do is say the Trump is bad, the Republicans are evil, now we're in power, and now we're going to impeach Trump. Are you going to get anything out of it? Absolutely nothing. And is Trump going to be run out of office? No, it'll just be a time waster. They'll get several months. They'll have hearings. Oh, Trump's evil. He's bad. He's done this. He's done that. This is terrible. Oh, we hate his guts. What about those his follies overseas? No, not so fast here. We do like the war stuff. In fact, he's not warmonger enough for us. We love him when he's being a warmonger. We hate him when he ain't. So vote for us in 2028. Here's Kamala Harris, of some iteration of Kamala Harris. It's absurd, but that's what we got. That's it. Laid it all out. That's how we got here. Now, that being said, let's talk about MAGA. MAGA, in my opinion, is going into 2024 was, particularly in light of the fact that the Democrats were coming unraveled because of the Gaza issue. It was probably the strongest and most coherent political movement in the United States. Again, I ain't judging it. People are they'll be on there like, MAGA, why are you defending MAGA? Or why are you attacking MAGA? I ain't judging MAGA. I'm trying to understand it, right? MAGA was the most coherent, um, strongest political movement and broadest political movement. And the reason that I say it's broad, because as you know, in 2024, they got a bunch of people, and this is quite a feat politically. This is a feat, right? This is something Abraham Lincoln was able to pull off. This is something that really good politicians can pull off. This is something in 2008 Obama pulled off, even though I would argue Obama's similar to Trump in that he was put in there. He was he said all the right words, but the whole thing was a fraud. But the ability politically, this is a powerful thing. When someone has a foundational coalition and they can still get votes outside of that coalition, and they can get votes from people that don't even like them, don't agree with them, disagree with some of their ideology, but any port in the storm. Some people say, well, I'll take this guy because he's the best, only chance we got. Sometimes they'll vote for you and say, I'm going to vote for this guy. Why? Because the other people hate him, and it's my chance to throw a punch at the ruling elite, because the ruling elite doesn't like this guy. So Trump was able, the Trump phenomenon was a combination of Democrats being sick and tired of being sick and tired, staying home. They didn't show up and vote for the Democrats. People who saw Trump as something different because the mainstream and liberal elite was trying to take him out. The whole machine appeared to be trying to take him out. So there were people who interpreted that, hey, they're trying to take Trump out. He must be going to do something right. They wouldn't try to take him out if he wasn't going to try to do the right thing. So you had his loyal base, which was there. You had the people who maybe didn't even like him, but wanted something different. And when they saw that the liberal elites and the neocon machine and all didn't want him, thought he must be the good guy, because they always hated him. They all hated him. And, so that's kind of what you had. And people who had economic desperation. He got, in a lot of states, Trump got 25% of the black vote, the black male vote. So you had a lot of black males who were facing economic struggles and said, hey, again, as I always say, any port in a storm, right? So what you had with Trump, he made some very clear statements when he was running. Now, as Joe Biden made some very clear statements in 2020, and he didn't keep any of them. He made some very clear promises. He kept none of them. Donald Trump made some very clear promises. And so far, he hasn't done much on keeping them either. But a couple of them, he's moved on. But to me, those, the more hollow ones, and the ones that really wasn't going to change anything, or he could pretend to be acting on. So, but which here's sad. Since Biden didn't try to do anything he promised, if Trump does one thing that he promises, even though it's half-assed at that, he'll appear better than Biden. And I mean, technically, I guess he is. If two guys appear to do 100 things and one of them does none and the other does one, let's face it, he's done a lot more than the other guy. But at any rate, so he looks good, better than Biden. But at any rate, so you got a coherent movement, right? And here's why they're coherent, because it was kind of clear what they wanted. Here's why I say it was the people that voted for Trump wanted some things that were pretty obvious, okay? And what they wanted was, for the most part, I think the coalition didn't want any more regime change wars. I think for the most part, they were feeling economic pain, and what they wanted, and I think this was a big part of it, I think what they wanted was stop spending all this money on the war machine and spend it on us. And you're running us poor on the war machine, and our home is falling apart. I think that was a big part of MAGA. I think that's coherent. I understood it very clearly that Make America Great Again, as flawed as it may have been, meant stop spending all the money over there, use that money to rebuild our industrial base. That's really how I understood it. That's what the MAGA people wanted. Okay. And now I see a lot of people in the chats, they're talking about Trump. Trump is this, Trump is that. Nah, it's irrelevant. I'm talking about MAGA. Realistically, Trump could want or not want. I'm talking about MAGA for the purposes of this. And I think people get and I think that's one of the strengths of the system. One of the strengths of the system is that they can focus us on the politics of personality. So when Garland Nixon talks about the system, because you have been brainwashed into talking about the politics of personality, you'll just talk about Biden. Biden this, Biden that. You'll talk about Trump. Trump this, Trump that. Foreign policy, you'll talk about Putin. Putin this, Putin that. Maduro this, Maduro that. We have been brainwashed into only talking about people. You might have heard this said before, small minds talk about people, right? We only talk about people. We talk about Trump. If Trump dropped dead tomorrow, the system don't change. Okay? So my point is, we need to understand the system and how MAGA fits into that system and what's going on with it and what the system's doing. Trump came in. Trump may want to do this or want to do that. Trump may be this or may be that, but the system is going to set the parameters, right? The Overton window is set by the system of how far you can go, how far you can't do. Now, within the system, there's something you have to understand, and this is critical. You can go back to feudalism. There'd be families of nobility fighting against each other. The thing you got to understand about the system is there are factions of the ruling elite that don't agree with how to fix this system, how to move forward. There are factions in the ruling elite that says, let's keep doing what we're doing. This is it. We got to keep doing what we're doing. We can't change. Now, it is my argument that those factions usually are the ones who are A, making a lot of money off the system as it stands, and B, or B, stand to lose a lot of money that they already have if the system changes. But you have a faction that says in the ruling elite that says, let's keep doing what we're doing. You have a faction in, yes, China and Russia are enemies. You have a faction in the ruling elite that says, I'm going to do things differently. Now, a lot of times it's whether they make their money. If you make your money from the military industrial complex, or you make your money from speculative capital on Wall Street, or you make your money from industry, or you make your money from, agriculture, all of these things, or you make your money from technology, those may influence, those no may about it, those will influence where you want to see the future. You may want to see the future in industry because you're an industrialist. You may want to see the future in technology because you're an AI Silicon Valley billionaire, right? I would argue that a big part of what's going on now is that the tech bros, the Silicon Valley billionaires, have a very, very firm footing in ascendant. They are in the ascendant as far as their influence on Capitol Hill. But at any rate, so there you have MAGA. Trump's in. MAGA says this is what we want. Now, I got to touch base. I got to preface anything else I say by saying it don't matter what MAGA wants. That the truth of the matter is this: the people in Washington work for the ruling elite. They don't work for MAGA. They never work for MAGA. Their job is to bamboozle MAGA in the same way that Obama's job was to bamboozle the more liberals or left lean, whoever you want. What do you want to call them? The liberals and the left, because the left was drifting away from the liberals, and the liberals will be isolated, and they need the left because they need the number of votes. So his job was to bamboozle the liberals were going to go along with Obama no matter what. He had to bamboozle that left, the Garland Nixons of the world and other people. And of course, some people on the right and even some libertarians who felt like the system is all screwed up and wanted to change in the system. So a lot of people that maybe ideologically weren't aligned with Obama voted for him because they wanted change. They got hope. And they got hope for change. That's all they got. They got a hopeless change, right? But at any rate, but that was Obama's job. And I think to some extent, that's all going to be the job of every leader, every body who can get elected president, is to bamboozle us and keep doing things the way they are. But as I said, we're at an interesting time because the U.S. world, imperial, whatever you want to call it, domination power is waning. There's the rise of other world powers. There's the rise of Russia and China, particularly China's rising fast as hell. Then you've got even Iran's and other people are rising, So, and meanwhile, the quote developing nations are, the U.S. is saying you gotta pick one. Well, they ain't picking us because we're on the way down, and China and Russia's on the way up, and Iran is even doing well. So now you've got a combination of rising world powers, deteriorating empire, and technological advances that level the military playing field. So the US can't go around pushing people around militarily because we have bases all over the place. And those bases used to be a way to project power and influence. And now, because of missile technology, those bases are sitting ducks. If a real war started with Iran, and Iran really is like, okay, that's it, it's all out, they could flatten every one of our bases. If the U.S. started tomorrow, and NATO said, "That's it, we're going to war with Russia." On day one, all the bases that were bringing Russia would be up in smoke, conventionally up in smoke. Same with China. All right, we're going to work with China. All of the bases around China would be up in smoke in hours. So even the ability to project military power is not there again. The U.S. has to try to use soft power and various things like that, right? Okay. So all of that being said, you have this MAGA group who says, but all in all, we want, quote, make America first. In other words, the MAGA people that are saying we don't want money spent on bases and war and all the other stuff. We want it spent on here. But they're forced to face the moral issue of the day, which is Gaza, right? And Zionism. And Zionism is ugly. Zionism is every bit as ugly as any iteration of fascism that has ever existed, right? It is the ugly face of violence. It is the ugly face of murder. It is the ugly face of unabashed fascism. And it reflects a reality about the political class and the ruling elite in the United States. And that is all this bull crap they've given us about, yes, sure, there was genocide and slavery and things like that in the past, but we've moved on. Well, the people may have somewhat moved on. Ruling elite and the political class are just as barbaric, they're knuckle dragging barbaric monsters as they've ever been. And the people um, aren't down with it. So the bottom line is this: the best the Zionists can do now, as their popularity wanes, shall we say, is try to buy the media, try to put 100 million people in on every YouTube show in the chat, attacking every. I mean, I go in the chat now of every show, including mine, and here's what you're going to find: you're going to find a bunch of bots attacking the host. Anything he says about Zionism or whatever, you guarantee there's going to be a million bots checking. And it wasn't there. It wasn't there a couple months ago. But when Larry Ellison bought CBS, when Benjamin Netanyahu said, well, yes, there's an eighth front, and the eighth front is the United States, you saw two things. I saw they're buying the news, they're buying the Paramount, they're buying everything that they didn't already own, the Zionists. And I saw a mass, gigantic influx of bots on YouTube, Rumble, etc., who attack anybody who opposes Zionism, and really anybody who goes against the war. They just attack them, or they just say inane stuff to try to distract in the chat. That's huge now. It's everywhere. So understand that if you're in the chat, there's going to be bots everywhere. And I don't kill them. For the most part, I let the bots stay, but there's going to be bots everywhere. That's part of the eighth front strategy. You got to understand that it is what it is. Look, if they pay people $7,000 a post, then they will pay 7,000 people $1 a post. You know what I'm saying? It doesn't matter. So that's part of this strategy, right? It ain't going to do any good because the people of MAGA ran into something different. Those who were buying into the, okay, we've got to defend Israel stuff, woke up one day and there's Charlie Kirk catching around. And they looked at it and they're like, okay, this looks suspicious. And then they find out all of the things surrounding it. And they start to look at Tucker Carlson and Candace Owens and say, hey, I think they're onto something here. Zionism is not our friend, right? And then I look in the chat of my show and other shows that I lurk in the chat and I see, oh, what do you know? There's all these bots and they're always attacking Candace Owens and they're always attacking Tucker Carlson and anybody. So now you see, as soon as MAGA starts looking in a direction, you see the news media will attack Candace Owens and Tucker Carlson and anybody else who's anti-Zionist. You'll see the TV shows do it. You'll see the bots everywhere on just like a machine, man. Just the bots are like a machine. Candace Owens, they all turn their guns on Candace Owens. Tucker Carlson, they all turn their attacks on whoever it is that's viewed as anti-Zionist. Piers Morgan apparently said something that wasn't pro-Zionist. Next thing you know, you go online, every YouTube show you go to, as soon as Piers Morgan is mentioned, 100 bots. Piers Morgan, what does he know? He's an idiot. He's a jerk, right? That's part of their game plan, right? Now, from my perspective, I think it's good for this reason. That just puts more people in, that just puts more numbers. So what they're doing is inadvertently, in attacking all the hosts on all of the YouTube and Rumble shows, they're putting more numbers in there, which I think is beneficial. It helps the algorithm, helps other things too. Anyway, let's continue. So now Trump is saying that he's going to attack Venezuela. I think an attack on Venezuela, after what happened with Charlie Kirk, right? After how that affected, you can have your thoughts on the Charlie Kirk murder. I certainly have mine. Look, I'll put it like this: as a former investigator, I don't come to conclusions, right? I don't have a conclusion about what happened, but I can see lots of evidence, and I can say the preponderance of the evidence now points to some kind of an alternative story that we're being given. That's all I can say. It's certainly, you would have to suspect the Zionists, you would have to suspect them, but I haven't come to the conclusion that it's them. I haven't come to the conclusion. For all I know, it was Tyler Robinson. If you ask me, do I believe that? No. But the evidence now is pointing to something outside of the Tyler Robinson sphere. We don't know. It's up to everybody to interpret the evidence as they see it. But we cannot deny that the Charlie Kirk murder and the mysteries behind the things that happened around it, in both the information that we've gotten from things that was said by Charlie Kirk before he died and groups that he may have started beginning to oppose, and the absurdity of some part of the story about people running around with a long gun in their pants and things like that. Things like that, we cannot deny that that has had an effect on the MAGA people, and a lot of them just don't buy the story. And clearly, there are a lot of MAGA people. You can think whatever you want, so can I. There are a lot of MAGA people that look back to Zionists, whether it's some billionaire Zionist here, whether it's AIPAC, whether it's Israel, I don't know. There's probably as many theories of who did it amongst MAGA as there are, MAGA people. But clearly, a preponderance of the MAGA people now who think that something's fishy about the Charlie Kirk death do feel that there's some Zionist entities involved, which is very, very powerful, because then as a result of that, we see an anti-Zionist move, right? Including, let's see, AZ, including this. The Anti-Zionist America PAC, Anti-Zionist America Political Action Committee. And if you look at that, there's all of the eagles and flags and all that, and the people with the tri-cornered hats and the 1776 patriot stuff. So it's very, very conservative, the hyper patriot. You can see that particular movement is founded in, or is run by, or is strongly connected to the hyper patriot, right, movement, the people who are like, I'm super, 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 super patriotic and 1776 stuff, right? So that particular anti-Zionist America PAC is um, connected to some foundational conservatism, and that means that it is a part of the MAGA stuff, right? That means that it's part of the MAGA movement. It's very influential in the MAGA movement. And so I think that MAGA right now, as far as Trump is concerned, that MAGA is hanging on by a shoestring in that Make America Great Again. Um, Make America Great Again is connected to Trump. It's strongly connected to Trump in that he came in and said, "I'll lead the movement." But I think it's getting to a point where it's like, okay, the guy who came in and said he'd lead the movement ain't the movement. The liberals say it is the movement. The liberals say it is nothing but a cult of personality. I think we're starting to necessarily see that it's not, that it was here as the Tea Party, that it became MAGA under in a red hat under Trump. That was the symbol, this red hat, right? And now that uh, Trump is straying from what the MAGA people want, it's starting to stray from him, and he's getting pushback. And I think that if Trump attacks Venezuela right now, I could be wrong, maybe. I have said for a while, I'll be surprised if Trump attacks Venezuela. He may. I don't know. None of us know. I'll be surprised if he does. I think he's reticent to attack Venezuela. I think he would prefer not to. His record says that he don't like to do stuff like that. He hasn't started a complete war. You know, he's had skirmishes with Yemen. He's did a fake war, a fake attack on Iran, where he threw some missiles in the middle of the desert to Iran, and then in return allowed Iran throw some missiles at a base in Qatar, and then everybody walked away. That wasn't a war. That wasn't an attack on Iran. It was a dance. That was the Mamba, right? I'll lead, and he shake my hips, and then it's your turn, and you shake your hips. That was a dance. Get out of here. But I don't know. Someone said, I think he will. No, you may be. Again, you notice the T. You think he will. I think he won't. But both, who knows? Maybe he won't, maybe he will. My point is not whether he will or won't, because this is all speculation. My point is that if he does, that I think that is the final nail in the MAGA coffin. I think it kind of collapses at that point. But I don't think MAGA collapses and goes away because it is only a Trump thing. I think MAGA does what it did when it was the Tea Party and Trump came along and said, I'm in charge of it. And they said, okay, we trust you. And then he was bamboozled. I think instead, MAGA reforms. I think things like this anti-Zionist America PAC, I think we're starting to see what another MAGA will look like, and that is this anti-Zionist America PAC, particularly, all the eagles and the flags and the tri-cornered hat peoples and the 1776 We the People stuff. That screams MAGA, right? The hyper patriots, etc. I think that one of the ways that we will see a reformation of MAGA, a reiteration of MAGA, would be this. And that is that in the midterms, and see, right now, this would be a dangerous thing for Trump to do, because the midterms really start at the first of the year. And I think that what we would see would be a lot of, and we're going to see this anyway, we're going to see people who are non-traditional and anti-Zionist, and probably younger people, run for office against some of the old dinosaurs. And I think that the horror for the system is this. And particularly, I think this somewhat happens anyway. But if Trump takes a swipe at Venezuela, it happens really strong on both systems, both parties, and that is young people who are anti-Zionist run for office, and in challenge in the midterms, and likely based on what we saw by Mamdani. And again, I think he's just a fraud. I'm not a Mamdani fan by any stretch of the imagination. I think he's a total fake and a total fraud. And he's Bernie Sanders, and he's um, AOC. That's the Democratic Socialist of America. For me, DSA nothing is just a fraud. It's a fraud. It is something to try to keep people on the left still going into the Democratic Party. It's still trying to give people on the left some hope that the Democratic Party is corrigible, that it's savable, that it can be done. No, it can't. But that's the job of the Mamdanis and the AOCs, to try to keep the Democratic Party strong and to fake out the lefties. But my point being, the fact that he won, running as an anti-Zionist, even though that ain't what he is, says to me that there will be many challenges in the Democratic Party of anti-Zionism, and some of them will win, and that can make a difference. And that's going to happen in the MAGA world also. And if Trump attacks Venezuela, in the MAGA world, you'll have, number one, you'll have an anti-Zionist pushback that has a lot to do with Charlie Kirk and Candace Owens and Tucker Carlson. I give a lot of credit to Candace Owens and Tucker Carlson. There are things that I disagree with them on, fair enough. I'll say this. I used to go on Tucker Carlson's show when I was at Fox, and I met Tucker Carlson. And let me tell you one thing about Tucker Carlson, notwithstanding the ideological difference we have, he's a nice person. I met him. And at Fox, there are people who are that I disagree with, are kind of cranky or mean or whatever. Tucker Carlson's a nice guy. I met him, and he was one of the nicest, friendliest people you ever meet in your life. And I had ideological difference with him, but I really liked him as a person, right? I only went on with Candace Owens one time on Fox, and I enjoyed it. And she said I was her favorite Democrat. Back then, I was a Democrat, right? But at any rate, so if he attacks Venezuela, and see, the thing about it is, if he attacks Venezuela, it's really a disastrous move, because the U.S., this idea about regime change, the U.S. can't do that really anymore, because the U.S. doesn't have a land army. Look, in the same way, think about this. The Europeans are like, we're going to send troops to Ukraine. How much can we come up with? And the French are like, well, we can come up with 2,000 to go fight the Russians in Ukraine. We're going to send 2,000 Frenchmen to the Russian border. 2,000 dead Frenchmen is what you're going to have in about 10 flat minutes. By the time a couple of fab 3,000s flop around them, they're done, right? But they could only come up with 2,000, and the Brits could probably come up with, a platoon. They got nothing, right? That's the reality of NATO today. Now, the Trump team is like, yes, we're going in to take out Venezuela, which is 3 times the size of Vietnam. And as Robert Barnes says, how do you say Vietnam in Spanish? Venezuela, right? But here's the deal. The only thing the U.S. they want to take out Venezuela, right? They can only muster 16,000 troops. That ain't much. Right? You want to put together a force to go in and take a country the size of France and Germany combined, and all you can come up with is 16,000 troops in a country that has, I don't know, probably a couple 100,000 in their military, and literally they have armed millions of people. You send those 16,000 troops in their mincemeat. Can you bomb from the air? Yeah, probably. And you don't even know what they're packing. It's like I go up and there's a guy standing there in the dark and he's got one hand behind his back, and I say, let's fight. I don't know what's behind his back. Does he have a knife? Does he have a gun? Does he have nothing? The only way I can find out is to attack him, and I attack him, and it comes out and it ends up a gun, and it ends up a knife. It ends up a machete. Then what? So my point being, even now, if Trump goes at Venezuela, do we know? I mean, Venezuela's got some able fighters. Su-30 is very able. They have some Russian anti-ship missiles. Can they get close enough to fire them? Do they have new ones? Do they have old ones? Do they have the capability to really hurt the U.S.? If we put, now, God knows, we put troops on the ground, they're going to have huge problems. So we don't even know, what does their air defense system look like? What is Iran giving them? What is China giving them? What is Russia giving them? Maybe nothing, maybe everything. We don't know. So you're going to go in and take a swipe at Iran, not knowing. I'm going to go fight a guy in the dark who's got a hand behind his back like this, and I don't know what's in it. Is it a gun? Is it a knife? Is it an empty hand? Man, that's a bad move, because that goes bad. What happens if we go in there and they do have some decent weapons, and they do shoot down some planes, and they do smack into the side of some ships, and we do take some losses early, quick and early? I think the U.S. can stand back and throw long-range missiles, Tomahawks, and things like that. They can throw at Venezuela. I think that's kind of, we can do that. Okay, but then what? You sit back and you throw a bunch of, long range weapons, and good and damn well that the Venezuelans, every potential target that they can come up with, they're getting everything out of it. They're moving everything out of it. They're clearing it out. They're prepping, right? Saying, okay, they're going to hit this base, this, and this, all the things they're going to hit. Let's get everything out of the way and prep to take a hit. Right? If somebody's getting ready to punch you, you're going to brace for the punch. If somebody's going to hit you in the midsection, right? If somebody says, I want to punch you in the stomach, hold on a minute, I'm going to tighten up my stomach. Go ahead. When you're doing a lot of sit-ups and you're working out, right? You ever guys do this when they're young? I did it. Guilty as charged, right? You got a girl and you're trying to impress her, and you're a young guy, and say, yeah, I've been doing sit-ups. You're impressing this girl, right? Oh, really? You've been doing it? Yeah, go ahead, punch me in the stomach. And she's like, well, I don't want to. And you go, you're a guy, you idiot. Yeah, go ahead. You want to show this woman you got a hard stomach. You tighten up. And she goes, boom. She goes, oh, your stomach really is hard. Yeah, right. You're a macho guy showing off, right? You're going to brace for that hit. She's going to hit it, and it's going to be and you're Mr. Tough Guy, right? Okay, because you're bracing. Guess what? Venezuela's bracing for a punch right now. They're waiting for it. They're moving stuff. They're hiding stuff. And if I was Venezuela, what I would do is I'd say, I'm going to hide my air defense systems, because here's what I know. Your idea is to throw a bunch of missiles in to take out my air defense systems, and then you can fly, right? I'm going to turn my air defense systems and throw them off. Okay, you go ahead and fly over. You go ahead and throw missiles and do all of that. And when you get tired of doing that, now I'm going to turn on my air defense systems. You know what I'm going to do? I got a huge country. If you're going to fly way into the country, I'm going to let your planes fly in. I'll let your planes fly into the country. And when they turn around to tie off, it's called an ambush. When they turn around to fly out, I'm going to turn on my systems. Then I'm going to hit you. Then I'm going to turn them back off. That's the ambush tactics that you use with air defense systems. You turn it on briefly, because it emits a signal that your enemy can lock onto and shoot. You turn it on briefly. You fire your missiles. You're fire and forget. Your missiles lock on. You turn it right back off. You move it, right? Those are the kind of tactics that people have learned. So does Trump just say, ha, 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 we're going to smack Venezuela? And what happens if you get smacked back? And now you got two problems. You've got Maga saying, you told us there were no regime change wars. And this is clearly weapons of mass destruction. You damn well know as well as we are that this has nothing to do with drugs, that this has to do with stealing their oil. You know it. It has to do with controlling the oil. It has to do with taking out all the countries in that region, with dominating the region. That's what it has to do with. And because it has to do with dominating in the region, you're going to get fought by everybody in the region. Trump could open up a war front where all of the American bases and all of the American embassy and everything in South America could be bad, could be attacked. He could open up a front in South America where all of these people say, we got to fight these gringos and get them out once and for all. So my point is, when I say Trump, I don't think you're brainwashed if you think Trump has the power to make all of these decisions. And it's Trump's doing this, Trump's doing that. That's the liberals. The liberals are like, well, Trump said this, Trump's doing this, Trump's doing that. And the liberals' contradiction is, well, Trump said he's going to do that. Well, you think he's going to do it? Well, Trump lies about everything. Well, wait a minute. You said Trump lies about everything, but Trump said he's going to do this. Which is it? If he said he's going to do something and he lies about everything, then we can ignore it. There's these contradictions about Trump because everybody wants to make it about Trump and not understand that this is the same system that George W. Bush was there. This is the same system that All of the people were involved that were involved under Obama. They're all in power and doing their thing. So my point is, I'm getting towards the end. My point is that Trump is not nearly as powerful as people would like to believe. That Trump's not necessarily making some of these decisions, that these decisions are being foisted upon us. And Trump is there for us to think he's all powerful. However, let's not pretend Trump isn't the president and he doesn't have some power, because he does have some. He can influence things greatly. So he ain't the end all be all. He represents the ruling elite and the political class because he's part of them, but he does have significant amount of power. So let's try to understand that. And MAGA is in deep and serious trouble, because if MAGA, in fact, if Trump goes after, MAGA is already deteriorating over Zionism. It's deteriorating. And people in America are losing all faith in the traditional institutions, because the traditional institutions have failed them, from COVID to economics to foreign policy. So good. People are losing faith in the traditional institutions that they should not have faith in. And last but not least, here's my point. MAGA is not a cult of personality around Trump. It is the latest iteration of the Tea Party. And my opinion is that if Trump attacks Venezuela, continues down the road he's going, even if he doesn't, if he continues down the road that he's going, that at some point MAGA will reorganize and there'll be a new iteration of MAGA. And that the iteration will be anti-Zionist. That MAGA will have some kind of an anti-war, a strong element to it, a populist, whatever you want to call it, element to it. There's got to be a populist element somewhere, because liberalism has nothing but absolute elitism and neoconservative warmongering. Liberalism is fully discredited. I don't like to say MAGA's this is great and it's going to fix things. I'm just trying to understand what it is, and I think it reforms. I think I don't mean reforms like a reform change. I think becomes another iteration of itself outside of the leadership and the personality of Trump. I think that's the direction we're going. I don't think MAGA goes away. I think it strengthens. And I also think one other thing I'll say, there are people lately who have been saying within the MAGA verse, but now remember, Rage Against the War Machine. Don't forget Rage Against the War Machine. Never forget Rage Against the War Machine. I'll tell you why. Because it brought together people who were left and right and all other kinds of things and said, we've had enough. We should stick together. I think that's something that people will look back and remember, because I think the next iteration of what was MAGA will then become people saying, you know what? I don't care if you're left, right, middle, center. Well, I don't care where you are. We've had enough. If we all have to come together to push it back against Zionism, to push back against war, to push back against a government who wants to destroy our right to free speech, I think the next iteration of so-called MAGA will be an iteration that is not as ideologically driven from the right, that it will be ideologically driven in opposition to particular policies. That's my thoughts. That's where I go. Thanks a lot, everybody. Let me just look around a little bit. I know the bots are in here. Oh man, you gotta love this. There's bots everywhere. Thank you very much, bots. I appreciate it, because we got 426 people in here, and the ones that are like, Candace Owens is terrible, there's no such thing as Zionism, Israel's great, yay, make Israel great again, right? You see who they are. We all know who it is. But my point is this: I'm glad they're there. We had 426 people, maybe 26 of them. My numbers are going up. They had me down, but what the Zionists are doing is they're adding numbers. The people here know what time it is when they see that crap. When they see that, hey, Mr. Nixon, I love Israel, they're great, Candace is terrible, Tucker's terrible, and yay, go Israel, Benjamin Netanyahu for president, right? The people in my chat know who these friggin' people are, and they know what's going on there, right? So I'm glad they're there. Let them continue their feudal moves, but thank you for supporting the channel. Okay, let's see Oh, hooray! We got a super sticker from good old Eric Suarez. Eric Suarez is great. He's done books on Venezuela. He's done a lot on Venezuela. All right, let me get going. You see my PO box there. You can mail stuff or whatever you want there. I want to thank my people on Patreon who really help keep this thing going. I want to thank my PayPal people. You can use Patreon, PayPal, buy me a coffee, all of that stuff to contribute. Cash App, you name it. Certainly appreciate everybody that does that. There's my PO box. As I always say, man, the people that do this stuff ain't making much, and we're making less and less as YouTube gets filled with AI slop. So thanks a lot, and we really appreciate the people who do two things: number one, who contribute, and number two, who share this stuff on all their social media platforms. Greetings, Garland from Europe. Disagree with a lot of your points, but I love your show, and you're obviously a great rational thinker. Thank you very much. Look, isn't that what alternative media is about? That somebody can look at what you're saying and say, pick and choose. You know what, Garland? You're right here. You know what, Garland? You're wrong there. You're right here. You're wrong there. And you know what? Guess what? I do that. I can sometimes I'll look at a show of mine that's 2 years old, and I'll look back and I'll say, oh crap, I really missed that one. Ooh, I was way ahead. I hit the nail on the head on that one. Oh, that one, yeah. You know what I mean? So I appreciate people like Win the Dogu who are intellectuals, who understand that what we are all doing is an intellectual exercise that we cannot get in mainstream media. That what we're doing is saying, let's figure this out together, but let's be genuine and honest. I think that's powerful. And I appreciate people who both respect that and who are happy to be a part of it. The bot complains through the show, but stays till the end. Exactly. That's it. The bot is that because their job is to say, Candace Owens is a jerk. Garland doesn't know anything. It'll never, anything you're saying is wrong. It'll never work. We're all doomed. We got to support Netanyahu. But they're paid well. They're making more money than any of us out there. Those people that are doing that, those are the ones that are making the serious money. That's where the money's coming from. At any rate, thank you very much. Appreciate anybody who can mail or PayPal or whatever they do, and even those who can't. Doesn't matter. The most important thing you can do is share this on all your social media platforms. I'm out.